Hello again, it's Ian Macleod from the GIBS Centre for African Management and Markets, or CAMM. I'm joined today by Michael Power from ALT Advisory, a public interest legal advisory. Welcome, Michael. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Ian. It's a pleasure to be here.
Michael is here to discuss a new tool that ALT has just launched, Data Protection Africa. This is a tool that maps data protection laws and authorities in 31 African countries. Michael, first question, why? What was the need you saw for this?
So, Ian, firstly, thank you so much to yourself and the Centre for having us. Data Protection Africa is one of ALT Advisory's special projects. And what we found through engagements with clients is a lot of NGOs, a lot of activists and companies were looking for further information around data privacy laws on the continent. We equally have a firm view at ALT Advisory in not only access to information, but also access to knowledge. And as one of our special projects, we wanted to present a database of applicable data protection legislation around Africa in an open source format, so freely accessible to the public for NGOs, corporates and activists to access this information and really use it to ensure that data privacy is projected and forwarded on the continent.
And tell us a little bit about the content. What information is provided on each of the 31 countries you've mapped?
So presently, and just to note, we did a full review of all data privacy legislation on the continent. There are some other databases that look into this, but in our view, ours is the most leading edge at this time. All of our resources are updated to the 30th of September, and we kind of map under each of the 31 countries, we provide a briefing note, which looks at the applicable laws in place and constitutional provisions. And then we go through the various attributes of a data protection regime, including what includes personal information in a particular jurisdiction, how that information should be collected and processed, how that data can be transferred across borders, and then equally what breach notifications apply in a jurisdiction if your data is leaked to an unauthorized third party, and what steps you can take to vindicate that. So both on the site itself, but also in an easily downloadable PDF, we present a country brief for each one of those 30 countries. And what we've done in the data space is this terminology is often quite complex. We've tried our best to simplify terms where possible and present a document that is equally user-friendly to a layperson as well as a data protection specialist.
Now, one challenge you found was that not all countries have a great deal of data on this, but you explored all the countries and ended up with 31. Some countries simply include data protection in the constitution and lack a more detailed regime.
So that's correct, Ian. 52 of Africa's 55 states have privacy provisions within their constitutions. Of the 31 countries we map, we're only aware of 17 with actual data privacy regimes. The other 14 that we map include reference to privacy in their cybersecurity or other laws. But on the continent at this stage, there's presently only 17 countries with data privacy regimes, and many of those yet aren't operationalized, like in South Africa, for example. POPI was enacted, the Protection of Personal Information Act was enacted in 2013, and that is yet to enter into force 7 years later. So I think in the main, what we're seeing is that I think the continent can do a lot better. It's very underregulated, and it's becoming increasingly important to ensure that data privacy is regulated and people's personal information is protected.
Now, from the countries you mapped, were there any surprises, any outstanding countries for good or bad?
So Mauritius at this stage is outstanding in the context. Mauritius has a newly enacted data protection law in 2017. It has a functional data protection authority, which is really important in data protection regimes. The authority is the person that manages complaints and also regulates the data protection space. The equivalent in South Africa is the information regulator, which has been established. But as I've indicated, the substantive provisions of POPI are not yet in force. So there's limited work for the information regulator at this stage. But Mauritius is really in line with international standards at this stage. It's a good jurisdiction for data privacy and equally for potential cross-border data transfers. Another good case study would be Morocco. They too have quite a comprehensive framework. I think when we look at negative examples, I think South Africa and Nigeria, two of our biggest economies, have a lot to account for. in terms of their data protection frameworks, particularly in the South African context, because we are hosting and storing a lot of data within our jurisdiction, but we can't provide adequate safeguards because we don't have legislation that's fully enforced, and we don't yet have a functional information regulator. So I think there are some good case studies. I think all of us have a lot to learn from Mauritius, and I think particularly South Africa and Nigeria have quite a lot of work to do.
Now, you mentioned some of the parties that might find this useful. Take us through the type of people and entities that you foresee making use of this tool.
So I think there's a variety. I think from the one standpoint, you would have data privacy activists who are really looking to push the privacy agenda given recent scandals such as Cambridge Analytica. That would be a starting point for organizations wanting to develop their work in that space. Moving then to companies, any organization that intends to do business outside of South Africa and even within it should be fully cognizant of their internal data protection policies, and they would want to balance that against data protection regimes in various organizations. A classical example is a lot of companies now are moving to the cloud, and they should know where their data, whether it be emails or Word documents, are actually being stored. They, in time, will have obligations to their clients to ensure that clients' personal information is protected. So I think any ethical and socially responsible organization, whether it be corporate or non-governmental, has an obligation to ensure that they are protecting both their and their clients' personal information. So anyone moving into these spaces would find this to be a valuable resource.
And for our viewers, where can they find Data Protection Africa?
So it's the URL is dataprotection.africa. You can also link through it from dataprivacy.africa. And it's a really useful forum. We look forward to comments on it. The site that you currently see, the tool is in phase 1. We've recently received funding to substantially develop into a phase 2, which is going to see the rollout of a mobile application, an increase in country resources, and then a lot of advocacy around privacy activism that can take place on the continent. So look out for developments in phase 2 of the project. But yeah, you can also find it through altadvisory.africa, which is obviously the company that developed it, and you'll find links from our website there.
Michael Power from Alt Advisory, thank you very much for joining us. That's a fascinating tool. I look forward to exploring it and using it. That was Michael Power on digital protection in Africa. We'll see you next time. Cheers.